Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Hey, 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 hey. Welcome. We're just giving it a moment here. I know folks are popping on. I know we got some folks on with us. We're live, another AAM program. So just giving it another moment or two. I'm gonna get us started. So make yourselves comfortable. I hope you'll stick with us for the duration of this really important program tonight and discussion, of course, always open to your thoughts and your ideas and your questions, of course, are always welcome. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So greetings, animal allies. Welcome to another AAM program designed to help you become a more knowledgeable, effective, and outspoken advocate for the animals. Tonight, we're discussing the problem of infighting. Infighting is hidden conflict or competitiveness within a group or organization that can potentially destroy our effectiveness as animal rights activists. With me is Amanda, and she's going to lead us through the best strategies for conflict management and peaceful resolutions. So my name is Michelle Granberg. I'm your moderator. I'm a mentor and team member with Animal Activism Mentorship. AAM is a multinational program supporting seasoned as well as new fledgling activists. Our mission is to empower activists to reach their full potential and equip them with the tools, community, and resources they need to boldly participate in our global animal liberation movement. Founded in 2020, AAM offers a free 3-month mentorship program, which pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Additionally, we offer free educational online programs like this. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person activism events around the country. If you're interested in applying to become a mentor or mentee or want to get involved or to donate, please visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com. All right, there'll be more information following the program tonight. So it's our goal to answer your questions. So I will do my best to relay your questions for Amanda as we go. Reminder, please keep your comments respectful and your questions on topic. Okay, that being said, Amanda, you can unmute now and go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you all so very much for joining us tonight. This is something that I noticed this topic hasn't really been covered in a workshop before. And so I did some research. I kind of come from like business background. So it kind of correlates with, things that happen in the business, that we can take the information there and apply it to our activism as well. So again, my name is Amanda Delzeith. I'm an AAM mentor, and a little bit about myself. This is not me tooting my horn. It's just to kind of show you the depths of the things I've done and seen over the course of the last 6.5 years. Not only am I a mentor, I founded the Ohio Occurrence, which will go into 2024's action later. I also co-founded the Southwestern Ohio Animal Rights Network with some of my other local activists and AAM fellows, including prior mentees and current mentors who were actually my mentee too. So kind of a full circle thing. I do also organize for Anonymous for the Voiceless, We the Free, and I do a lot of grassroots organizing for things that come through town like circuses, rodeos, PBRs, horse carriage protests, things like that. I also do animal transport and rescue. I do table events. I've been asked to speak at Veg Fest as well as to classes. And I've traveled a lot for activism. I've been to Canada several times. I've kind of just traveled around. I've done AAM tours in multiple states and cities. And of course, worked with other organizers and activists to either organize something or to, when you're in an action. So I want to highlight that I am in no way an expert in this field. This is research that I did from my business degrees that I have and kind of the knowledge I have, as well as information that I researched to bring forth, just to give us some tools to kind of help with de-escalation, which we'll talk about towards the end, conflict, active listening as tools, and then like some conflict mapping that we can do amongst our groups. So conflict as an opportunity, question mark. So when two or more people have incompatible opinions, values, or needs, and this can happen in all sides groups, it can cause a conflict. It doesn't mean that there's a breakup in the group or someone loses an opportunity to make positive changes in their community. But we want to make sure that our groups are good for the long run. We want to make sure that if conflict and things come up, that we're able to have these tools to be able to kind of mediate the issue, and then we can be better activists in the long run for the animals. Understanding conflict takes awareness, and working with it takes practice. Developing a healthy approach to conflict is like a bike. So if you regularly maintain a bike, no major problems occur. It's usually pretty smooth every time you go. Like I know with my bike, I have to take it every spring and get it checked and the tires done and all the maintenance stuff. And then it's usually good until the next spring. Well, anything that we do in life takes practice and also has that kind of finessing that we have to do, especially when we're working with other people. So when we learn the skills and awareness that we need, we can help ourselves maintain similar to the bike. And there are typically 5 stages of conflict. So it usually starts with discomfort. And you can usually have a feeling inside yourself that tells you that a conflict's occurring. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has sensed that discomfort. Incident, so there could be a minor clue that acts as evidence of a growing conflict. So these could be things that are visible, like someone's being short to someone, sharp exchanges, visual expressions, clenching of the fists, pacing back and forth, different kinds of things that you can start to see people are getting frustrated or just conflict might be brewing. Misunderstanding, this can happen sometimes because people perceive information a little differently sometimes, but this is where the situation has escalated to a degree that the parties have developed some false assumptions on each other, and tensions can start to occur. And this is where the communication breakdown and emotions start running higher. It's hard to hold the conflict in, and sometimes emotional outbursts can happen because, when we start having conflict, we can have emotional reactions to it. And then, of course, crisis is that end where there's a breaking point in the relationship. And usually communication will only focus on the conflict. So we want to utilize tools to be able to take ourselves out of that conflict, or even de-escalate it from the first stages before it gets to the conflict issue. So why deal with conflict? So learning new skills for working through conflict shows respect by seeing other people's points of view and taking time to communicate. It shows that we care and have compassion for those around us. Dealing with conflict helps us build stronger groups and be more effective in bringing social change, because what we do is not easy. We're fighting animal agriculture, we're fighting industries. We don't need to be fighting with ourselves. Understand and working through conflict can be a deeply empowering process for everyone involved. It can help us become stronger as well. Groups with a healthy approach to conflict will be better prepared for the long run, and are better to effectively bring about social change. Clear communication and trust enables the group to make better decisions. This is because you're getting multiple viewpoints, because we're not all the same. So we all have our own opinions and things that we can bring to the table. Working through conflict skills skills us for an uncertain future, because as we know, animal rights activism, we're fighting every day to, break those ceilings for the animals. And this allows us to develop skills to work collaboratively together to make a lasting impact for the animals. Why conflicts happens in social change groups. Most of the time, activists are in a get the job done mentality and may not invest time and energy in healthy interpersonal communication and relationships. I work in like a business setting, so we actually get training at work on interpersonal communication and things like that. But some people might work in an environment where they've never heard of that. So we want to make sure that we're working together. And it was a really nice, just a little quick story. We had a big activism community in Ohio pre-COVID. And when COVID hit, things died down a lot, as it did in most places. And then after COVID, I did a lot of solo activism, which is great and fine, because someone is out there standing up for the animals. It only takes one person and one sign. But as the community grew, I was very grateful, because then I had other people to help. Well, the more people you have coming in, though, you have those different opinions and stuff. So when we came together and co-founded our organization Sworn, we actually had put some key things in place, like bylaws and stuff, to allow us to be democratic in our decisions with anything, whether it's the website, whether it's the design, things like that. So one person isn't feeling like, overpowering everyone else. And so we knew conflict could occur. So we were trying to buffer and make sure that we had tools in place to be able to make sure that we could democratically come to a decision for the group itself. And it's a way that we focused all of the individual organizers to having one kind of a one-stop shop for all the activism. It's kind of a triangle: Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, and anything in between there. And the reason for that is because then you don't have to contact this person or that person. You can just go to one focal point. So digress a little bit, just wanted to share that story. But when conflict happens in social change, we're also challenging the mainstream norms. So you are already in a tension situation with non-vegans and industry and these other players in the field. And we're not starting at a level playing field. Like they have much more money than we do usually. And, that money plays a big part when animal agriculture comes to town. I mean, I think we all know how powerful money can make an industry. Poor communication. People don't have space or ability to express how they feel, their concerns or needs, and less likely to hear the feelings and concerns and needs of others. When we have the communication and all of our activists and organizers have what they need, it can help us work cohesively and have less conflict in our groups. Having ineffective meetings and lack of clarity about goals and visions. That's where having some of those tools like setting a process, voting, and things like that can come into play. Because then you have a baseline of, this is the process that we're going to take for whatever decision we're making. Not having a clear participatory way forward or clear understanding by all the group regarding the process or decision making. Again, back to that process and democratic, like having bylaws and such. Having a lack of clarity can lead to conflict because people can be a little confused by maybe the message or the action itself, or something that just might cause confusion with someone. So we want to make sure that we clarify anything that people could misconstrue or be confused about. And we want to not have power imbalances. So depending on privilege and informal hierarchies. We're all here doing what we need to do for the animals, working together. Like we all work together. Like no one's more powerful than someone else, because that can cause conflict and resentments in groups when people start playing that way. And I have kind of seen that happen where someone wants to be the person, and when someone's trying to help, they feel like they're being pushed out as the person. And it's just really frustrating, because when that person gets busy and life happens, whether it be school or work, and you're not able to get those actions done, we need to be out there. So there needs to be more than just one person being the person. And that's why, like, I'm totally like, I welcome the help. Like, come help me. Let's get out on the streets and get active, because there's only so much I can do as one person. So we want to make sure that we don't have those imbalances in our communities. My cat Piper might meow. She meows a lot. She's old. She'll be 15. So she likes to meow. So if you hear her, that's her. That's Piper. So some of the things that we can look at as we look at our groups is task and maintenance roles. So some items under the task roles could be suggesting agendas, identifying issues and things to work on, request or offer facts, give your opinions, and not just one person's opinions, like the whole group's. Show contradictions. We want to make sure that our information is info-based. And then on the other side, we have maintenance roles that could be being compassionate to others, express feeling and encourage others, offer and accept compromises, draw out silent members, because sometimes the silent ones can if they're not feeling heard, they can actually build resentments up as well, and it can cause conflict. So you want to draw out those silent members and make sure you're getting their opinions as well. Name any unspoken issues that might come up, summarize discussions, make the group aware of direction and progress, and you can all come to these things together. So some questions to ask your group. Which roles do you play? What is a healthy equilibrium for the group? So these are things that you can discuss within your group setting, whether you do meetings, maybe there isn't a meeting that you're doing, and maybe that's something that you can start doing with other activists in the group to try to facilitate and kind of focus in on some things that you might want to specifically get done, whether it be banning something like foie gras, or fur, or some other action for animals. These are different ways that you can do that to make sure that you have a healthy cut across. So understanding conflict, understanding what's really important to all parties in a conflict is a great starting point, to understand what the conflict really is and how we can think about potential solutions from the conflict. There's something you could kind of think of it like an iceberg, to provide an analogy for understanding. So like the peak is our position and our initial response to the conflict. And then just beneath the surface is the interests the interests of the parties involved. So what we want to ask is what is important in the situation, such as fears and concerns about the conflict or anything that may occur. And then another level below that are the universal needs, because everybody wants respect, a sense of belonging, and being understood and feeling valued. Those things are really important, I believe, to everyone. We all want those things. And because we're all different, there's going to be different needs that we're all going to have, but working together, we can kind of get on the boat and, kind of come to that final destination together for animal liberation. Solutions seem to flow much more easily when acknowledging to ourselves and each other what our interests and needs are. Again, when we're working with multiple people, opinions can differ, and it's just important for all to be heard. Responding to conflict. There's a difference between reacting and responding. A lot of times when it comes to infighting, the majority that I've seen lately has been online. And one of the things that I find with that is most people react. When you react, your emotions come to play. So when you're behind the keyboard and you're messaging and you're scrolling Facebook, sorry, she's distracted me. When you're scrolling Facebook and you see a post, whether it be from a non-vegan, or in this case, we're talking about infighting. Sometimes you may see someone in a vegan group who's asking questions about veganism or getting to be vegan. And someone may comment some suggestive stuff. Maybe someone has had a conflict with someone in the past and they come in and they start kind of blowing up the information that's going in there. And then there's misunderstanding and miscommunication about the topic at hand. Or like some people's gray areas. For instance, let's say horses. Some people ride horses and think that it might be vegan, but like myself personally, it is not. Horses are not here for us, or they're here with us. But you know, that could just be an example. And if someone's trying to educate someone, they may get defensive and react to that post. And then it just kind of starts going back and forth. And then you have kind of a conflict on hand and you have some infighting. And it's really easy to do it behind the computer because no one else is around you. And it's kind of what we call keyboard warriors, right? So we're tapping away behind the screen. And again, you're doing it in the moment, instead trying to take that moment and respond. So taking a step back and just kind of letting it sink through and then really coming up with something so you're not emotionally involved in it and you're responding. So that's that first section there where it's talking about reaction versus responding. So a reaction is impulsive and instantaneous. And that's similar to what we do online. And that's, again, where I've seen a lot of infighting happening as well. Response is where you take a considered approach and you're conscious about what you're saying. So providing facts and resources to someone who's inquiring about something. You know, that's the kind of things usually people are looking for, is like, I want to do this, I don't know where to start. Which of course with like activism, AAM is a great starting point because, you know, we help people guide them along to being an activist. Many people have probably seen the fight, flight, freeze. I include fawn in there because some people just kind of remove themselves and kind of internalize. But a fun fact, our amygdala is the most primitive part of the brain, and it controls our reaction to threat. And it doesn't know whether it's a bear or a conflict with a human. It just knows that there's conflict and it reacts. So I think that's really interesting. Like, our brains are very powerful, but sometimes it doesn't distinct like what the fear it is. It's just adrenaline hits and it's like go time. So dealing with emotions in conflict situations. So instead of reacting, we suppress our emotions because we want to avoid conflict. And that could be people who are doing like avoidance type things where they just keep scrolling. Find ways to move from habitual responses of reacting or suppressing to having those more considered conscious choice responses, because we need everybody. You know, we're not trying to be gatekeepers. We're not trying to belittle people. We're just trying to educate people, especially when they ask, to just be better for the animals. And these are the ways that you can do it. And, you know, but we need everybody. We need people online. We need people on the streets. We need people on the phones. We need them everywhere. So I am going to pause for just a second. And Michelle, were there any questions that have popped up?
Well, I'm going to ask for questions right now on the section that Amanda just covered in terms of conflict. And we're going to go further now into communication and even more about resolving conflict. There is a comment from P. Pity which you might want to, maybe you could respond to this. There's so much reaction and fighting among the activists that are supposed to keep the non-human and their suffering utmost importance. The fight is when there is enabling.
Mm. Yeah, enabling can be part of conflict. It's when people start taking sides, and and I've seen that as well, where people used to be friends. There's an infighting, and then the group of friends separate, and no one goes the actions anymore because they're afraid the other party's going to be there. So then none of them show, and that can be an issue as well. So trying to find ways to be able to overcome that, and just trying to figure out how to resolve the conflict. Of course, in that particular scenario, I was unaware of the details of it. But again, we're feeling like we're building back up our community. And hopefully, I'm hoping that gets resolved and we see them again. So it definitely can be hard when people are kind of coming at you feeling like people are taking sides and attacking too. So again, when we do that, it just hurts the animals. The only ones it hurts really are the animals, because then if people don't show up to action, we're not there to be heard. One person is powerful. I'm a very big advocate for solo activism, but we're more powerful in numbers. So the more people that we have, the more impact we're going to have getting our word or our message out and informing the people. I hope that helped.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we can maybe take one more question before we go on. But Amanda, what I'm thinking and what I sort of hear you saying is that there's sort of a relationship between infighting and the investment we have, the care we have, the passion and how much we value the goal. So that maybe infighting starts when we lose sight of the goal or the bigger picture, the thing behind the thing, like why we're doing it and our why. And we need to keep circling. One thing we can always try to do is for ourselves first, remind ourselves of our why we're even doing this in the first place. Otherwise, if we don't have that big why, go elsewhere. Like just don't do this. Go somewhere else where you have a bigger why, right? But when people lose sight of the animals like that, then they get in the weeds of focusing on each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And Simon Sinek has some really great YouTube videos too. Yeah. And he talks about, I can't remember the exact details, but he talks about how Apple became like the technology, even though they don't always have the highest technology, but there's a certain way that they process their why, and they kind of work it backwards. Instead of I'm this person, I'm selling this and you need it. Instead, they're like, this is who we are, this is why you need us, kind of thing. And it's kind of like, if we can put ourselves in those situations and think about, we are the activist, we are there for the animals, and this is what we do, this is how we're going to get there.
Yeah. And we're all human. So we can get distracted, and you're right, life gets in the way sometimes. And so we also have to know our limits sometimes and our boundaries, and we have to know when we're getting burnt out. And sometimes that, infighting is a side effect of people not taking a break for a while and getting burned out and dystopia, right? Claire Mann talks about dystopia. It's the burden of knowing. Like all activists who are fighting for the animals are carrying this heavy burden on their shoulder. And we have to recognize when, like, it's okay to take a step back if you need to, and then come back. Don't go away. Don't step back forever.
But that's where self-care comes in, like looking into self-care and taking care of ourselves, making sure we're eating healthy so we can feel our best, making sure we're getting sleep. It's kind of like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup or an empty pitcher. It's like we need to fill ourselves before we can flow into anything else, whether it be another person, whether it be the animals and what we do. And anyone who knows me knows, like, they just call me busy bee because, if I'm not traveling, I'm working. If I'm not organizing, I'm traveling to help someone else, be there for the animals. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I sometimes still have to do that too, where I have to be like, okay, I have to take care of myself for a minute. And, a lot of life changes happened and like I can't travel as much. And because I have a companion animal that I have to make sure that I take care of. So, she'd be mad at me if I left her for days. Any
Got
other
it.
questions before I move
No, I
on?
think we're good. I'm going to keep monitoring. And I'll interrupt you possibly, but I think
Oh, that's fine.
you can go on.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and start working at the tool active listening and good communication. So, with good communication, what we want is to rebuild connections and de escalate conflict in early stages. And I have a little bit on de escalation at the end of my briefing. So, we'll go into that a little more later. Active listening, developing empathy, and seeing things from another's perspective are key skills in rebuilding a connection. Again, we're not all the same, right? So we want to make sure that we're seeing things from another's perspective. And in order for us to do that, we have to communicate back and forth with each other. So holding back our assumptions and judgments help rebuild relationships because when we assume things, they may not always be correct. We don't know what's going on in someone else's life. So we want to make sure that we're just trying to feel them out and make sure that their needs are met and having that open communication together. And that also prevents escalation of conflict. This is something that all of us vegans are probably pretty familiar with, empathy, making sure that we're standing in someone else's shoes so we can better understand their feelings, perspectives, and values. And when you're being empathetic and being a listener, you want to make sure that you're fully present. And don't focus on emotions and triggers or try to fix the problem. In that moment, you just want to be there and be that listening ear. And active listening can assist as well, which is, oh, I thought that one was next, but we'll talk about respecting differences first. So I have a little diagram over here to the side. Everyone's blindfolded and they're touching a different part of an elephant. So one person says that the tusk is a missile launcher, and then one person says that the trunk feels like a snake, and then someone else says that the leg feels like a tree trunk, and they're all incorrect because they're just different parts of the elephant. So if we think our opinions are right and others are wrong, that's where the human element kind of comes into play, where it's like, I'm right, you're wrong, kind of the Matilda thing. I'm right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're small, kind of thing. It's more helpful to focus our attention on finding areas of overlap and common ground with others, or opinions that are complementary between each other, because those are the positive things that we can focus on and build those relationships on, are the things that we have in common, even if it's just one thing. I actually was in a training at work, and that was one of the questions that we had to talk about, was if you have 100 things that you have to work with someone and you disagree on 99 of them, what do you do with that one item that you agree with? So it's kind of like that. Even if it's one item that you agree on, focus on that one thing that you agree on and work towards, working with those other items. With differences, it's more helpful. I just did that one. If we listen to and respect each other's viewpoints, we'll have a greater insight to the bigger picture. Because again, we all want to be heard. We all want to be validated. That's just how we are as humans. So again, elephant, you each have a different piece. It's gonna feel different, but in the end, it's the elephant that is still the final, I don't want to say destination, the final, being that's there. Here's active listening. So with active listening, that is a tool in communication that's really important, I find. So active listening is about suspending your own thoughts and processes and making a conscious effort to understand another person's perspective. It allows us to focus on core issues and meaning of someone else's message to understand them better as a result. Active listening does include body language, including eye contact, and when appropriate, short questions to make sure that you're understanding what they're saying. And that also gives them the opportunity to validate whether what you're understanding is what they're meaning, and then they can correct you if you're wrong. Active listening helps open the door to communication and deeper understanding of the other person. And again, this kind of goes back to empathy as well. Like once we have a better understanding of someone's perspective or what's going on, it can help us come to a conclusion and work out whatever conflict might be brewing. So some tips for active listening. You want to make sure that you create a safe atmosphere for all parties with minimal distractions. And depending on what you're going to be, you don't want to be in a cafe or a bar or anything that could be very loud, or the topic that you guys might talk about might need a little more privacy. So just knowing those elements going into it. Be clear about any limits you have from the start. So if you have an appointment you have to run off to, and you only have X amount of time, you want to make sure that the person that you're talking to is aware of that. You don't want them to think that you're just taking off because of something that they said. So you want to put those boundaries up and be like, this is something that I have to do after. You want to make sure that you make the mental space. This can be hard if you don't do self-care stuff, because if you're burnt out, it may not cause you to have that mental space to be able to help others with their problems. And that's why self-care is really important. I know we've done some workshops on that too, I believe. So check the archive of YouTube from AAM and find some of those as well. Great resources. If strong feelings come up, acknowledge them to yourself, because something someone says might trigger you, but at that point, you're there just for the active listening part, and it's not about you, it's about them. You want to focus on the main ideas and look for unspoken emotions, intentions, and meanings or needs. Ask questions at appropriate times. This allows them to clarify what they're saying, and for you to make sure you're understanding what they're saying so that they feel heard. Don't respond with stories, your own stories. Again, you're there for them or for the situation, not, to insert your own story unless it's asked for. I would say that. So it's, if they're asking for your opinion on something, or they're asking you for something, then that could be an invite to share that. But other than that, you're just trying to get the information out. You want to make sure that you're showing that you're listening with eye contact, sometimes even leaning in, because that shows that you're engaged. You want to summarize what they've said briefly, typically not word for word, but that you understand what they said. And active listening, of course, comes better once you practice. So practice makes perfect, as they say, even though I feel like nothing is ever perfect. We should all be teachable and coachable. So we can always have some work. And I think, okay, so taking effect, or actually no, active listening. Oh, I think that's where we were going to take another break. See if there were any questions that popped up. Any comments, questions?
Any questions for Amanda about active listening or conflict? No questions. No questions. Any
Well,
questions?
just type them in. We'll stop again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shortly.
Keep put your questions in anytime. Maybe they know active listening so well, which is great.
Yeah.
Or they're really listening. They're very present listening. So I have a background in active listening from when I volunteered on a suicide hotline for about 10 years. I mean, active listening is just so across the board. And when I learned active listening, it like changed my life, almost like it changed the way I was with people.
Mm-hmm.
And it now it's always my default, and it's just woven into how I approach pretty much every interaction. It just became part of how I operate in the world. But you can imagine on a suicide hotline, as much as we might be sometimes trying to stop someone from committing suicide, 99% of it was really just people just wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
And that was enough. That was helpful. So just being present, quiet, like you said,
Mhm.
reflecting back their feelings. It's very powerful not to underestimate, how important active listening is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I'll just continue on and let me know if anything pops up.
You're right ahead.
So, taking effective action. So, there are things called mediators that if you feel that you're unable to settle the conflict within each other, there are those outside parties that are neutral that can come in and kind of help facilitate the conflict resolution as well. Helping others listen using the active listening tools that we talked about. Mirroring is part of taking effective action, but it kind of counters the active listening part because mirroring is when you listen and repeat word for word. But some simple steps, step-by-step process that you can do is what do you see happening, which is you're observing. How do you feel about it? And that's where you're taking feelings into it. What do you want to happen? And what can we agree to do about it? And that's where some of that coming together and working together to figure out what's our goal, what's our why, how are we going to get there. These are some of the other questions too that you can like even taking observation. What's going on in my city? How do I feel about it? What needs to be done? Like the activists in the community, what are your what do you feel is most important to get done, and then how do we agree to get there? How do we do what we need to do for the animals? And then conflict mapping is a tool that you can use to actually kind of come to that decision. As you can see, I have a little diagram over to the right there where you have the issue in the middle, and then each person has a section. So conflict mapping can help you get a clearer picture of the issues and the underlying conflict of the situation. It helps the group with underlying needs, fears, and to find common ground. And it's structured in such a way that it moves through conflict and can be easier when people are having trouble speaking or even being unable to be civil. So, writing, they're not being verbal, it's all written down. So for this, usually you just need something like a large paper flip chart. You could probably do it on a dry erase board or a chalkboard, markers, pens, chalk, whatever kind of item that you're using. And then these are the steps that you can take to do it. So first, you have the issue in the center. Aim for an unemotional language and open-ended questions. You don't ever really, when you're trying to figure out what an issue is or how to come of it, you don't want to ask yes or no questions because then that can kind of help shut people off. You want to make sure that you're kind of like that Socratic method that we use on street outreach. You don't want yes or no. You kind of want, how does this make you feel? So if you're taking kind of that approach where it's like, why? What is this issue? And how's it making us feel? And then you want to know who's involved, who in the group's involved with the conflict. And then you can draw lines for their statements. What do they need? What do they fear? That's that section, under their name, their interest, needs, fears. Make sure that you're just discouraging interruptions. That way it's a focused action. But you want to look at new perspectives, like being in another person's shoes, bringing those perspectives. Because again, we're all not the same. I know I feel like I'm duplicating myself. It's just, I really want to make sure that those points are across, but we're not all the same and we all have different needs and wants. But we want to make sure that we find any common ground that we have, and having those open conversations. You want to look for new solutions, and you can use like Ideal Storm. I know in a class that I've taken at work, we had like a dry erase board, and we had these 3 sections when choosing the most suitable option. So we had sticky notes that we would put our ideas on. And then as a group, we would go through all of the stickies for the ideas and we would put them under one of these 3 categories. So it would be very useful lacking some elements, and not practical. So you would stick them under the one that you need. And then the not practical, of course, you put off to the side because you're feeling that those are not practical at that time. The very useful, of course, are the ones that you want to implement, and the ones on standby you want to keep because it's just lacking something. It might just be one element or one thing that might be missing that you can come to a conclusion together on how to make it very useful. So those are kind of some things that you can do as a team. And again, these kind of things come from the business world, but we really can use them as a team for the animals, like within our activism community. And then after you've come up with your idea storm, you want to make sure that you implement a plan. So some questions to ask is what has to be done, who will do what, and what does the timetable look like? So in this case, like it might not necessarily be a timetable, it could just be events or actions that we're planning. But looking at what's in your city, what needs to be done, what's available to protest and to try to eliminate additional animal exploitation. And then assigning roles. So like with Sworn, one of the things that we did was we do have some roles. I think we still have to actually solidify some of those, but trying to make sure that we're implementing steps and processes for us. Again, like I said, having a democratic viewpoint, like all of our stuff is comes together from the group and not one person. So was there anything that came up with active listening before we go into de-escalation?
There's a question kind of related from Gloria. What do you do with people who just refuse to communicate and refuse even to use a mediator? I mean, is there anything you can do?
So, I mean, I have seen a situation before, something kind of similar, and it's just if the situation feels unsafe, it's just sometimes not everyone's going to get along. And those people, I don't want to say might be kicked out of the community, but if they're not being a resource and building community with the community, and they're just feeling like they're gatekeeping or putting the community down. I mean, honestly, I don't want someone who's going to be trivial and be like pinpointing things, and when they're playing like they're a perfect vegan or i.e. activist, if that's something that they do, but they're trying to pretend like they're perfect. But we have to be pragmatic in the world that we live in. I mean, we live in a non-vegan world. I live in a city that doesn't have fully vegan options all the time. The ones that we do have maybe only have weekend hours, might only be open for 8 hours in total in the whole week. Like we have to do, like when we do meetups and stuff, it's at, veg friendly places. Is there, fryers that are shared? In most places, there's only one place in my city that doesn't have a shared fryer. And it's so small that we have to reserve weeks in advance in order to, to have a big table there because it's just so tiny of a place. And so, if there's someone who's doing nothing but being negative in the community, do we want them in the community anyway if they're just going to drag everybody down and try to be that gatekeeper as well, and then like shine what's that called, projection can be something that people do. So they say it to other people. I mean, myself personally, I've been, someone called me not I can't remember exactly what it was. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to let it affect what I do. I'm still out on the streets, online, working for the animals. I don't answer to them. They don't pay my bills. My job does. They don't manage my time. I do. So I just remove myself from their situation. And I'm also a person where if someone shows up that I don't have to talk to people. Like I can cross the street and go over there and still be there for the animals. And if that person, if I feel threatened, like here in the city, like I have, I have a text for like police officers, like, ah, can you help me? But I've never felt truly unsafe. But taking yourself out of the situations, some people just will never be able to work in a group setting. Maybe they don't have the mental capacity to be able to do that. Um, I don't want to say like selfishness or anything like that, but again, it kind of goes back to what I shared at the beginning, where it was like you know, our opinions, we're each different. But we have to kind of come together, and knowing that we're living in a non-vegan world, we have to be pragmatic about our approach, especially if you don't live in a city. And anyone getting out and getting active for the animals is super important. And sometimes these people who are being gatekeepers, or even just and I hate to say this, but the foodie vegans, like they don't understand activism. They think that we are militant vegans. And it's like, what is so militant about getting out and speaking out for animals, or educating people that think riding horses is okay, and just giving them resources that show otherwise? Like, how is that militant when we're just speaking up for the animals? I don't understand that. But, these are things, because we live with other humans on this planet. Unfortunately, we have to maneuver and swerve through these things. And again, those things can break down communities. Um, it's just, it's heavy on my heart that we have communities that have to go through this stuff. But again, we're all human. We all have different needs, wants, feelings. And sometimes people just put themselves first. And that's unfortunate, because that can break communities and cause issues for the animals. Because again, when we have these conflicts in our communities, the only ones who suffer are the animals, because then no one's out holding signs and speaking up for them, because they're like, well, they'll do it. But then if that person doesn't do it, then no one's there. So just things to think about as we go. I think I was long-winded on that answer, but I hope I answered your question, or at least the realm of what you were looking for.
Yeah, I think those are good, really good thoughts, and certainly safety first,
Safety first.
and
And
everybody has to, safety first. So, and when something's out of your scope, and it needs to be handled at a much high, another level of managing, that just talking through issues won't necessarily work. It's okay to step away. And someone was mentioning, sometimes you just have to block someone if it's online, that's okay as well. And CDA activism just commented, Serenity First, I was going to read hers. There are times when some differences are also unfortunately irreconcilable, because some behaviors may create unsafe or abusive environments for other activists.
absolutely.
CDA activism asks, is there any need to fight over politics at vegan activist events, or should we just put our differences to one side and focus on the animals?
I mean, that does come up a lot, intersectionality in the vegan community. Humans are also animals. Um, but there's other social justice movements that also do focus on those other social justice movements. Animals have the least amount of people fighting for them. And so when I see myself as an activist, but I do have a heavy focus on non-human animals, because I know that they're not spoken up for quite as much as, human animals. But I help in other areas. Like there's been times where I've been doing street activism, and someone comes up and they'll say, well, what about humans? And it's like, well, we fight for humans too. It's just we're working for the animals today. And maybe tomorrow we're going to do X, Y, or Z. So we can do multiple things, but I really think that when it comes um to some of these things, like we can agree to disagree on the intersectional things, as long as it doesn't affect our way to go forward with fighting for the animals. I think kind of that kind of covers it. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think we can go on.
Okay. Awesome. So I'll go ahead and we're going to go into a little bit of conflict de-escalation. So I'm a relatively new organizer for We the Free. And I found that this was really informative information as I came on board. And really, and this is kind of more focused on in person, not necessarily online. I just wanted to make sure that we discussed the online version or the online portion earlier because it is important. And I think that that is where a lot of our infighting happens. But in conflict de-escalation, signs of an escalation could be that a person is clenching their fist, tightening or untightening their jaw. They could cross their arms and kind of block, like that's kind of a shut off. Could put their hands behind their back, just kind of, you know, different, they're not their norm, so to say. They can start pacing, fidgeting, shaking their head, maybe doing big sighs. I'm a person where when I start getting a little flustered, you'll hear me sigh a lot. I do that at work a lot. A change in type of eye contact. Maybe they're not doing direct eye contact because that might make them more emotional. So maybe they're looking off in different areas. Sometimes someone's chest might be protruding out, body hands away from the body. And then it could even have disruptive behaviors like yelling or bullying. Hopefully not physical in like punching or touching, but because that would be later where you would, if you're feeling unsafe, you take the appropriate action. So assess, become aware of the situation and the surroundings, assess if there's an opportunity to de-escalate or if you should walk away and get help. And that comes down to that safety feeling. If you're feeling unsafe, you want to make sure that you take whatever action you feel needs to happen. Some questions to ask. Does this person seem like they are in a state to no longer engage and have a reasonable discussion? Is this person a potential risk to anyone's safety, including yourself? Does this person feel safe in the setting? Are others, myself, or objects blocking them so that they feel trapped? Because if someone feels trapped and they can't get out, that might cause additional emotion to start building up. Am I equipped and in the right state of mind to de-escalate the situation? Is there a quieter setting close by that would be better suited to de-escalate? And if you're deciding to de-escalate and do a one-on-one conversation, that's usually less intimidating. And for your own safety, you want to make sure that other people can see you. In case things get physical or violent, you want to make sure that you can see your volunteers and they can see you. But you don't want to have discussions with people, with others around, because then they can feel very attacked, maybe, with having others know what's going on. Calm. If you're upset, it will only escalate the situation. So you want to make sure that you take a deep breath, use a soft tone of voice, respond instead of reacting. We talked about this earlier in the earlier presentation. Don't get defensive. That's when you're starting to add emotions into it. It's when you start getting defensive about something. Place your hands in front of your body or relax, because you don't want, if you have your hands in your pocket, someone might think you have something, whether it be a knife or, they may feel unsafe and it might escalate the situation. You want to make sure that you have space. You don't want to be up in anybody's face, invading their personal space. We want to make sure that they're not feeling threatened as well to escalate. And then, of course, if de-escalation is not working, stop. And if the situation feels unsafe, get help. That's one of those things where you or your volunteers are in an unsafe setting. You need to make sure that you have a plan B option on who to call if needed. So with listening, we talked about active listening. This kind of plays a role. You want to make sure that they feel like they're fully listened to and the concerns without passing judgment on them. We kind of talked about that before, where we're putting our own assumptions and feelings aside and being there for them. You don't want to interrupt and truly listen to what they have to say, like we talked about with active listening. Maintain an appropriate amount of contact. You don't want to stare them down, because then they can feel they might get emotional about that. But you want to make sure that you're engaged in contact, eye contact, to make sure that they know you're hearing them. Maintain neutral facial expressions and body language. Body language is a big factor, one-on-one conversations. We can see when we wrinkle up, we can see when we, make our eyes big. Like, there's telltale signs that we may not realize that we're doing, that people can literally read your face. So we want to make sure that we try to have a neutral setting with our face and not to react to anything that the person's saying. And then nod along when appropriate so that they know that you're listening. Confirming understanding, you want to make sure that you're paraphrasing and using open-ended questions to help ensure that the person's aware that you understood their frustrations completely. So these are some questions that you can do to clarify if I'm understanding you correctly, and then what they're expressing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And then to make sure I fully understand, would you mind elaborating? So these are kind of like open-ended questions that allow you to get any additional clarifying information that they may feel is needed to be spoken of. So you want to make sure that you can relate. So even if you don't agree with them, you don't have to agree with someone to relate to their position, and be respectful of that. Expressing an oh, I got a typo there. Underestimating or understanding of why the person feels a particular way will help resolve the conflict. And this kind of goes to where we talked about earlier about people feeling heard and felt. You want to make sure that you make a personal connection. Call them by their name if you know it. If you don't know it, make sure you ask their name. Don't re-ask for their name, because then they won't feel heard if you have to ask for their name again. And I'm one, I will admit to this. I am horrible with names. I'm great with faces. So this is something that I feel I'm constantly working on, is being better with people's names, especially when you're in a very big group setting. Like, if you have a lot of volunteers that come, most of the time you see the same activists. But if you're an organizer and you're organizing and you're trying to get things set up and you have a new volunteer come, I've forgotten a name before and I've had to re-ask, but there hasn't been a conflict that causes that. So it's like, after the action occurs, I'll formally introduce myself, and then you can either decide if you're going to, add them to any kind of social media presence. But I just wanted to say I am totally guilty of that. But in this particular situation, we want to make sure that we're focused on that. We want to validate how they're feeling, use the feel, felt, found method, if appropriate in the situation. And we want to empathize with them on some level, making sure that they're heard, and that their feelings are valued or valid. So with resolution, even if a resolution cannot be made at the time of the conflict, we want to express that you appreciate their time, that you've heard their concerns and will take necessary actions. You can always come back as well and have another meeting. Maybe people need to decompress and then re-attack the conflict. I think sometimes taking a pause is really important. Just like we talked about between reacting and responding to messages. We want to take that moment to really think about what we're saying. So you want to ask for their ideas and solutions, shift the conversation to future, and thank them for their information, for them coming and volunteering, whatever the situation may be. Because when people are acknowledged and they feel that they're seen, just like with work, if you do a good job and your manager says, great job on that report or that presentation, you're like, okay, I'm doing a good job. Like, I felt validated. And again, if at the end of the resolution and de-escalation is not working, stop. And if it's unsafe, go with your plan B on, safety is very important in these situations. Most of us are volunteers and don't get paid for what we do. So we never want to put ourselves in an unfortunate situation. I think, yeah. So are there any comments or questions before I go over the resources?
Any questions? related to what Amanda shared.
Well, while
Yeah.
they're popping up, I'll go ahead and go over my resources, and then we'll go into into questions. It gives some people some time to.
Yeah, there's definitely one. I had one from previously. So do you want me to ask that, or
Oh,
do you want to do resources first?
I'll do resources first, and
Go
then that
ahead.
way some more can pop in there if they have
Great.
questions. So some of the resources I used was the We the Free De-escalating training. It's literally a 2-page thing, and I just made it onto slides so it was a little easier to present. Seedsforchange.org.uk was a PDF document that I found that was really great with resources on conflict resolution and tools for that. Some of the information also came from the Center of Nonviolent Communication. And so I have those websites there as well. Another thing, none of this specifically came from Melanie Joy's video, but there's this video on infighting and animal advocacy movement. Really great, informative video. It's very long, but very useful information. And those of you who don't already know who Melanie Joy is, she has a lot of really great stuff that's out on YouTube as well. So her stuff is a really good resource as well. All right, so questions.
Yes. So Simi asked, and I was going to ask the same thing. You had mentioned kind of quickly the feel, felt, found method. Can you clarify, expand on that,
Yeah,
how to learn about that?
so it kind of goes into where people want to feel that they're heard and that they're I don't want to say conflict, their viewpoints are like, oh, how can I best kind of blanking on it. Felt found. I think Joey Carbstrong did a really good video on this one. He has a workshop that he did where he goes into this in depth. So I will kind of at least put that as a resource to go and check out Joey Carbstrong. I believe it was Joey Carbstrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But he did a really excellent where he deep dives into the feel, felt, found method. So I don't want to say anything incorrect. So I'm going to recommend watching his video on feel, felt, found. Hopefully that's good.
Yeah.
I love giving resources because there are people who say, like I said, I am in no way whatever I said at the beginning. This is not my forte. This is just stuff I research and just presenting to give people tools. I definitely want people to go out and see the great information that other people have taken the time. Like he literally goes in detail on that method a lot better than I can do because he did the research on that specifically. So please check out Joey Carbstrong's video.
Yes. I'm sure everyone here knows Joey C.
Yeah.
Very well. And you know
Oh,
what, Amanda, just like I think all of us, sometimes the best way for us to learn is to teach. Even when
absolutely.
you haven't completely mastered the material, mastered
Absolutely.
a whole knowledge base of
Mhm.
what you're teaching, it doesn't mean you can't teach it. You can relay it. And for me, that's the way that I memorize something,
Mhm.
is to just talking it out loud, talking it through, interacting and getting feedback like this. And if anyone else has resources, there's tons of resources out there. So
Mhm.
please feel free to share in the chat any resources that you have. So there was Serenity had a question earlier. She had put in the on the event page, how as individual activists and as communities and organizations prevent and respond to instances of abuse, discrimination and sexual harassment while also minimizing infighting.
So, so with that, I think thinking in all of those things, safety first, as we kind of mentioned over the course of the workshop, that's really important. Um, if it's within the community itself, that could be where you there's, as they say, there's always 3 sides to every story. There's one side of the story, the other side of the story, and the truth. Because yeah, there's 3 sides to every story. No one is their recollection may not be the full truth, because we can always be biased in ourselves. So when it comes to like my thing is like I'm single now and I don't want to date anybody, an activist in my whole state, because I don't want to take any chances that anything goes bad and, causes some sort of conflict in my state. Like I don't know, maybe UK, I don't know. But when it comes to the seriousness of things like sexual assault, you do want to make sure, like I know when I do Ohio Occurrence, we always have someone to be a reporter and non-reporter of any kind of sexual assault that happens, and having those known. So as your community starts to grow, I think making sure that those are things that are implemented into your bystanders or the community guidelines that you're setting up to see how are we going to, as a community, affect that change. Like I mean, if it's just like you and someone else, that can be hard, and you might have to have a professional outside source come in and help with that. But I think that if we all come together as a community and try to figure it out, I mean, I've had activists tell me, I really don't want to be there if this other person's going to be there. And I respect their decision for that. And so when I know that another person wasn't going to be at an action, I would let them know. And if the other person showed up and that person needed to leave, I totally understood, and we have to do what we're most comfortable with for ourselves. Some people can't just cross the street and be on the other side. Maybe that person is abusive and, will call out or could possibly go after that person. I've seen it where people have done that, where they're telling their side of a story, but not letting people know about certain details of the story, but it's making them look like the victim. And again, two sides of the story and the truth, but sometimes you can sometimes see when people manipulate like the verbiage of something to project or make it seem one-sided, instead of giving all of the details. But I think that if I'm answering the question correctly, safety is number one. And if we have to go outside of our community and take other steps, those are things that we would need to do. But I think having the pieces in play to deal with it within our community is important, to at least have some sort of guide there. Now, knock on wood, the last 2 years, this is our third year planning Ohio Occurrence. And in the last 2 years, we've had people be the reporter and non-reporter for sexual harassment and assault. And luckily, we haven't ever had anybody come forward to report or not report. Not, like I said, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx myself that this year we have any of that, but we want to make sure that the environment that we're giving our volunteers to come, because again, we don't get paid for this. Like, we're taking time out of our day. Time is a very valuable resource that we can never get back. And we're taking time out of our day to go and do something. If someone's making that unsafe and in the community, then it needs to be taken care of, whether they're removed from the community, whether some sort of police or something come involved. Again, I think it comes down to what you're comfortable with in your community. I hope that answered your question, or at least guided a bit.
Yeah, good. Very good thoughts. Very good thoughts. If anyone else has any thoughts on that or further questions, I know this is where it gets kind of sticky, right? It gets there's no like magic wand here to say this is how you fix it every single time. Sometimes it's not fixable. We're talking about people who are complex and bring their baggage to situations. Sometimes something is clearly drama. And I don't want to say drama like I'm judging the situation from a judgmental point of view, but sometimes things are self-created by someone. They are choosing to focus on something in a certain way, and it's slanted in such a way that it's distorted, and sometimes that's clear, but sometimes it's not clear if it's how much of it has a basis, how much of it is drama. So I guess all we can do is not look back in the rearview mirror and pick apart what we've seen, what we can do is go forward and take responsibility for ourselves and
Mhm.
maybe ask ourselves, is this something that really needs to be done, needs to be said? In other words, I think there's that saying that sort of goes, before you speak, you ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind?
Yeah.
And maybe if you answer no to any one or all of those questions, you just, don't drop comments into a situation unless it is
Yeah.
absolutely necessary, true, and kind. Otherwise, sometimes we can just be stoic. It's like they call it this stoic approach. Marcus Aurelius called this the stoic approach, where sometimes silence, or just witnessing something is the best approach. Now, that being said, of course, things that cross the line that are illegal, that are hurtful, like, those that we mentioned, abuse and harassment, no question, report. If,
Absolutely.
as if you have been victimized,
Well,
100%. So
and that goes to I mean, we're all human at the end of the day, and someone may have had from trauma or a traumatic experience, or maybe they just didn't learn to be civil, and that's a possibility. So they just don't know how to act in situations. If they're trying to break apart a community, or maybe they're jealous because they're not part of the community, so they're trying to break it up. I mean, like I said, we're all human. There's a human element to it, and unfortunately, not everybody's head's in the right place to be there for the animals. But we can do is our best, and to use those tools to be able to make it the most safe and active driven community that we can have for the animals. Because again, going back to it, the common denominator on animal activism are the animals, right? Like, no one else is speaking up for them. If you're not out there speaking up for them, who is?
and
That's
in the meantime, while we're fighting, they're suffering, their suffering
absolutely,
continues. And a lot of it, we want to recognize that it's just another symptom of how friggin' stressed we are, because we want that cruelty to stop today,
absolutely.
and how friggin' frustrating it is to know that it continues. And so we're taking that out on each other, not necessarily consciously, but this is our opportunity, which is why we're doing these kinds of discussions today, to step back, get centered, restate to ourselves why we are doing this, who we're doing it for, our reasons, our why in doing that. And we're just not here to say that it's definitely easy. Serenity was mentioning how important it is, as from an organizational standpoint, grassroots organizations, to put things in writing. That's what we do. We learn as we go. Sometimes when there is an issue, then we start to put
Mhm.
policies and practices in writing, and, you know, but, we can do that.
Mhm.
We can borrow from longer standing organizations and programs, that what works for them. And there's still no guarantee that you can prevent issues from happening and infighting from happening, but it's more likely and possible and
Mhm.
probable if you do have things in writing, you provide those policies and codes of conduct. AAM we have our own code of conduct, of
Mhm.
course. If you can ask people to read that, really insist that they read that, hopefully it will register, and maybe
Mhm.
it will. But again, we're human.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
even
as
when
perfect as the animals. The animals are
Mhm.
perfect, not us.
Absolutely. And it does, like, especially when I do the Ohio occurrence and we plan out the weekend of action, like we have a code of conduct, we have house rules, and anyone who doesn't follow those, unfortunately, has to leave. Well, you can still show up to the events as long as you follow the event guidelines. But, if you break a house rule, like our houses are dry houses because we have activists who don't feel comfortable being around certain things. So we want it to be a safe environment for all. So, like, with our houses, we don't allow alcohol in the house. People can go do what they want to do as grown adults outside of the activist house. But for those 3 or 4 days, we want to make sure that everyone who's coming to the house feels safe and can participate in any workshops or meals that we provide. And those are decisions that we make as a group in order to, and people know this going ahead because when people register, they get these guides and the house rules if they're asking for housing so that they know what to expect when they come. And it's kind of like what I was saying with Southwestern Ohio Animal Rights Network. What we did is we started building those up because we kind of knew there's possibility that we're going to disagree on some things, and so we're going to have voting when we vote for things. And when there's, I can't remember what the percentage was. I think it was like 60 some percent. Like it was a specific percentage. It has to, carry by 60 some percent. And, but, trying to put those processes in play to make sure that we're covering ourselves so conflict doesn't occur between, especially when you have more than a couple organizers or more than a couple, like the more people, more hands in the pot, the more opinionated everybody can get. And so you want to make sure that depending on how you want to grow, you want to set things in motion early to have those guides in place.
Yeah.
So in some of that, I want to share, which I'm kind of parroting what Michelle said towards the beginning when she talks about all the amazing free resources that AAM provides. So we do offer the 3-month mentorship, where you can either do one-on-one or group settings with trying to focus on what you want to do for the animals, and we work together to get you there. There's live tours to help gain experience with seasoned activists. Again, Ohio Currents is one, and we've had 2 successful years, planning our 3rd. We have these amazing workshops. All of them are archived on YouTube. On YouTube, we have everything archived, including the podcast, The Liberation Hour. AAM puts out multiple newsletters each month, very informative, gives you information on upcoming events, what's happened, spotlighting new mentees, mentors, things like that. We do also have a Clubhouse app. It isn't used as much currently, but hopefully we can maybe get that active again, because those that don't know, Clubhouse app is kind of like radio. So you have like a platform and you can have discussions inside of Clubhouse app. So AAM is free because of donations. It is a nonprofit organization. So I have some of like the Patreon and the Cash App there that they use, but you can also go on to their website or like Instagram. You can go to their link tree. It's all right there. All the Ohio Current stuff is there too. Like fundraisers, we do individual fundraisers for actions that we launch. So like Ohio Currents, we always have a fundraiser designated specifically for our event that we're planning. One of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite signs, and one of my favorite pictures. This picture was actually at the Columbus Zoo at the Cleveland event back in 2022, Ohio Currents Cleveland. But there is no freedom without action. So any social justice movement that has progressed and has occurred, there has always been some sort of action behind. Staying stagnant and being where you are does not allow change to occur. You have to kind of press against, the social justice or press for social justice movement. But if we just sit tight and just assume that it's going to get better and assume that other people are taking care of it, that's not necessarily what's happening. We need to get out there and do action for the animals. So this is me. Some ways that you can follow me. I go by Gem Steady Vegan on my activist handles on pretty much all social media. You can also follow Ohio Currents. We have social medias for that. Our events are out there, as well as Sworn. If you're in the tri-state area and you're interested in joining us for our actions, you can go to Southwestern Ohio Animal Rights Network on Facebook or sworn_org on IG. And then I have my emails down there, my personal one or my activist one. And then if you have Ohio Currents questions, And speaking of Ohio Currents, hey, we have officially launched Ohio Currents 2024, year three, in Columbus, Ohio. The link tree is up there at the top. Registration is open. Fundraiser is open and available to receive funds. The fundraiser pays for an activist house or two. We're hoping to do two because we had a pretty full house last year. This allows for people who come from out of town to, not have to pay for their own housing. So it allows it to be affordable for people to come and do action for the animals. It also helps pay for, we try to provide 3 meals a day for all the activists. Just in case we don't get any donated meals, we're hoping, and we always hope that we get local vegan restaurants to donate meals, which last year we were able to get 2, which was phenomenal. And then we're hoping to get a van because it makes transportation much easier to put things and people in a van and get to your destination rather than trying to find parking for 20 cars. We've got it done in prior years, but someone had brought a van last year. We were like, wow, this makes it really easy. So we did to put that in our estimate for this year. So we're hoping for big things and big outcome, and just super excited. I've had people tell me that this is one of their favorite events, not to be biased, but
No, be biased.
it's my
We're allowed.
I'm a little I overdo things, I guess, sometimes with my spreadsheets. We have a workbook that we have that I started, and it just grows each year. We're like, oh well, this could be something better. And it's literally like a spreadsheet, and I build out the schedule and everything, and we put all of our targets, and it's just this whole build out thing that we do. But I have a great team too. It was really small the first year. It was just me and one other person up in Cleveland, really kind of doing it. And now I have a team of people, and it makes it so much easier. And I'm so grateful for all of them because they help make it be a success. So it wouldn't be the phenomenal thing that it was without my team. So really appreciate them. So hopefully it's enough time ahead, August 1st to the 4th. You can put it on your calendar. And registration's open. If you are coming from out of town and need housing, it's kind of a first come, first serve for what we can afford. Like I said, hopefully we'll be able to get 2 houses this year. But again, it all comes down to fundraising. So share, invite to both the event and the fundraiser. You can see our link tree. I'll be posting videos out there. If there's any public events, they'll be on the link tree. Other resources we'll have out there. I'm working on getting some merch together to have. So just a lot of exciting things coming. So, and if there's any final questions, we can wrap up, and Michelle can go into some announcements.
We are gonna, yes, I got some final announcements. We are gonna wrap up. Any final questions? P. Pitty had asked, can we put in writing not to bring in human issues or human movements to a non-human outreach action movement? I was gonna say we can. I don't know how we'd enforce that.
Yeah.
It's a big ask.
It is.
So I don't know, but
I guess that would just be something that each community would have to come to an agreement with. Again, we're all different. Our areas are different. I live in a very red state, so it's just, it's those things where it's we all still have common ground though, right? And we want to focus on what's common and what can be done for the animals. So if that's something that causes an issue or conflict in your community, I just went over this whole briefing with some amazing tools that hopefully they can help you work out that conflict and come to a decision as a community.
Fantastic. And speaking of that, if you have gotten something hopefully out of this program tonight, feel free to share any of your takeaways in the chat. if you'd like to. So we are gonna wrap up. Is that okay, Amanda? You're good? We're good. We got it. We got her done. You could close your slide down if you want.
Yeah, I really appreciate everybody's patience and time. And I mean, this was an hour and a half out of your day. It will be archived on YouTube. So hopefully you can share it with others who can maybe benefit from it as well. I appreciate AAM and all they do and allowing me to come and facilitate this. I hope that you were able to take away some great tools and information to help your community become better activists for the animals.
100%. I echo everything that Amanda has said. And I just wanted to announce our next program that will be on February 6th, right here on our YouTube channel. That will be Ask Vegan Evan Anything. I don't know if you know Vegan Evan, please follow him. He's been an activist since age 5, and he is amazing. And please check out our previous workshops, as Amanda said, here on our YouTube channel. Everything's archived. And please subscribe, and share. Follow us also on social media. Consider becoming a patron by finding AAM on Patreon. Your donations allow AAM to continue to provide free educational resources for activists, which ultimately saves more animals. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee or want to get involved, please reach out to us. Thank you, Amanda, so much for your time and wisdom. Let's give a big round. Right. And thank you all for joining us and all the tireless work you are doing for the animals as well. I think that's it. That wraps up, right? Yeah. Except to say, stay strong, everyone. Live vegan. Thank you. Thank you. Look at your balloons. I love it. Thank you, everyone.